Within each of us, there is a battle between what is true and what we wish was true. Sometimes truth wins, but not always. Our wishes fight back, and if you let them, they'll win. You could see this battle in a casino. They say the house always wins. That's how the chandeliers keep sparkling, how the champagne keeps flowing, how the buffets stay piled high with delicacies. Those luxuries weren't paid for by winners. Yet, players keep pulling the lever, spinning the wheel, playing the next hand, hoping for that miracle, that life-changing jackpot. For the player, the odds are nearly zero, but simple math guarantees that someone, somewhere, will eventually hit it big. And when they do, the casino puts them on a billboard to bait the next dreamer. So, what kind of person keeps betting against reality? What kind of mind looks straight at the truth and keeps analyzing the data, hoping to find that one secret method that will turn a losing proposition into a winning one? We don't have to guess. Our Torah, God's gift of wisdom to mankind, gives us a perfect case study. As the Jewish people wandered through the Sinai desert after the miraculous exodus from Egypt, the surrounding nations faced a choice: live up to the reality they had just been revealed to them through undeniable world-shaking events, or find some way, any way, to keep doing things the way they always had. And as always, it was the elites, the ones who had benefited the most from the old order, who were most desperate to preserve it. One of those elites was Balak, king of Moab. His monarchy, propped up by pagan ritual and idolatrous custom, was under threat. Not from military conquest — Israel had no designs on Moab's land — but from something far more dangerous: the truth. A spiritual truth that, if accepted, would shake the foundations of his power. And a spiritual threat demands a spiritual solution. One this threatening called for a specialist, someone with a reputation for perceiving spiritual realities at precisely the right moments to invoke judgment, someone who knew just what to say to turn blessing into curse, to blot out the Israelites not by sword but by word. Someone like Bilam. He lived in Pethor, near the Euphrates River, far from the desert camps of Israel, but his fame had spread across kingdoms. If anyone could protect Balak's throne, his power, his wealth, his status, it was Bilam. He wasn't just some hired magician, he was a prophet. No less than the Torah itself compares him to Moshe. Bilam was renowned for perceiving spiritual realities that eluded every other necromancer, diviner, or priest. And for the right price, he was available. So Balak made him an offer. Bilam, to his credit, knew a sucker's bet when he saw one, refused. But Balak sweetened the deal: lavish rewards, prestige, honor. And Bilam, knowing he shouldn't, knowing what God had already told him, took the bait. Turning down that kind of money? That's just not done. The problems began immediately. Even Bilam's beloved donkey saw trouble written all over this trip. And when he finally arrived, it would become abundantly clear: Bilam would only be allowed to say what God told him to say. But Balak wasn't ready to hear that. He demanded that Bilam try anyway, and so he did. Bilam found a spot overlooking the Israelite camp. From there, he could see the children of Israel and hopefully perceive something about them that would anger the one above. He built an altar to convince God that he meant business. And then he began to speak. From his lips emerged not a curse, but a blessing. Balak, naturally, was outraged. Their self-interest kept them probing for a weakness, any weakness, that would make the mission a success. Again and again, they gave it one more try, climbed one more mountain, built one more altar. The Or HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim ben Attar, was an 18th century Moroccan sage whose commentary on the Torah is renowned for its depth, precision, and spiritual insight. He tells us what they really were doing. They were searching for some new vantage point that might reveal hidden sins, some crack in the armor, some technicality that could make Bilam's curse land. Reality didn't demand that they keep at it. Only their self-interest did, requiring a universe with a god whose blessings could be outmaneuvered by persistence and ritual. As usual, when fighting against reality, bad luck followed. What do you do when the only luck you have is bad? Well, you make your own luck. And that's what they did. It didn't end well for them, but we'll get back to that in a moment. We might think we've come a long way since ancient times, but have we really? Our tools might be more sophisticated, our lives might be healthier and easier, but our human tendencies remain the same. Whether it's wasting money in a casino or wasting a scientific career on nonsense, the pattern hasn't changed. You see, in the 20th century, physicists realized that the universe has a beginning. This discovery horrified a certain type of mind that wanted to believe the universe had always existed. If it had a beginning, any beginning at all, it's a step closer to the conclusion that it was created by a creator. If that wasn't bad enough, the qualities of our universe, the physical laws that make it up, also seem to indicate that a creator's fingerprints were all over it. You see, there's a funny thing about the universe we're in. It seems so finely tuned, remarkably so. If the strong nuclear force was just a little stronger, atoms wouldn't form the way they do. If it were just a little weaker, the universe would be nothing but hydrogen. If the gravitational constant were even slightly different, stars would burn out too fast, or never ignite at all. No stars, no planets, no people. If the ratio of matter to antimatter had been off by just a hair, the entire universe would have annihilated itself into a blaze of nothing. These constants fall within extremely narrow ranges that allow complex structures like atoms, stars, and planets to exist, without which life as we know it would be impossible. The constants of physics could have been anything: the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, the speed of light. We know of no law that demands that these constants be what they are. And yet, they're just right. Not close, not good enough. They land squarely within the life-permitting range. And it's not just one constant, there are many. And every one of them had to land in the sweet spot. The odds of all of them being just right don't add up. They multiply. The unlikely case that any one constant would fall just right, now raise that to the power of 20, 30, more. The odds of this universe existing by chance are indistinguishable from zero. Some physicists began to wonder, is this a setup, a put-up job? Does the universe look finely tuned because it was? Because if the universe was designed, then the designer gets the final say. And the physicists? They wouldn't be the ones mankind turns to for all the answers. That conclusion was unacceptable. And the thing about a conclusion that's unacceptable is that it won't be accepted. And so it wasn't. And so some of the physicists got to work finding a theory that would preserve their preconceptions. They knew just where to look. I have a feeling that they took their inspiration from the casino. You see, to find their model, they looked at a very large room, an infinitely large room, in fact. Why infinitely large? Because that's the only kind of room that can fit an infinite number of monkeys. Each monkey seated at a typewriter, dutifully pecking away at the keys. They knew one thing for sure. Given enough time and enough monkeys, one of them is bound to type up Hamlet. It might not be an efficient system for writing plays, but in theory, it would work. And that's where they went for their answers. Running the argument backwards was a convenient way to sweep away the inconvenient fact that the cosmos, which had a beginning, was also fine-tuned to a stunning extent, making it highly unlikely. Sure, they'd sneak in a few hidden assumptions into their backward argument, but what are a few of those between friends? Here's the new logic. Under natural chance alone, our universe's constants seem highly unlikely because they are so fine-tuned. If there were only one universe, one that was so improbable it might suggest divine authorship, but their ideology says that divine authorship is impossible. They believe that no gods exist. Therefore, the universe can't really be unlikely. It must be explained naturalistically. In nature, highly unlikely things do happen, given a sufficient number of tries. Therefore, our finely tuned universe must be the result of a cosmos taking a sufficiently large number of tries. And so, the multiverse was born. The idea is simple. Our universe seems to be incredibly lucky, but that's only because it had countless chances to get it right. Out of an enormous number of universes, at least one was bound to land in the sweet spot. They added one more claim. We shouldn't be surprised that we find ourselves in such a rare universe, because intelligent observers can only exist in universes where conditions allow for them. This line of reasoning got a fancy name: the anthropic principle. The anthropic principle is not a theory in itself, it's an interpretive filter. But to avoid the conclusion of design, some physicists invoked the multiverse hypothesis, claiming our universe is just one lucky roll among countless failed ones. Was any of this remotely scientific? Remember, science is a method for formulating explanations of nature by testing hypotheses through organized observations. So, were there any observations in the history of science that made a multiverse more likely or less likely? Other than wishful thinking built into their circular logic? Not a one. While some speculative models suggest indirect tests, no concrete observations to date have provided evidence for a multiverse. But it sounded scientific, and that's really all they needed. Credit where credit is due, they did construct their model of the universe using equations derived from real science. But the model they created, what they called the landscape, cannot be observed, which means the hypothesis of its existence cannot be tested. So, what does it have going for it? The landscape has got mathematical rigor and a certain elegance and plenty of explanatory reach. But the history of science is littered with busted theories that had mathematical rigor, elegance, and explanatory reach. Ptolemy's model of the universe with its epicycles had elegance. It also had the Earth in the middle of the cosmos. Lord Kelvin's vortex model of the atom had rigor. It also had atoms made of little knots in an invisible fluid that no one ever found. The luminiferous ether explained everything, right up until it explained nothing. Rigor and elegance are virtues, but history shows that even the most beautiful theories must bow to observation. One route to proving the landscape theory true could be that the math compels it. Maybe, given the laws we do know, a multiverse is the one and only conclusion that can be reached from our facts. Is it? To find out, we have to ask, are there other cosmologies that fit the very same data? Yes, plenty of them. Cyclic models, bouncing models, variable constant models, emergent gravity models. Each one squares with what we've observed so far. Different equations, same facts. For perspective, let's go back to that infinite room, the one with the monkeys and the typewriters. But this time, we're going to ditch the monkeys and fill the place with an infinite number of physicists. We'll give them pens and papers and computers, whatever they want. And just to make it fair, we're going to make each one of them infinitely brilliant. We're going to tell them to write down every cosmological theory consistent with the evidence we have. Will they ever finish the list? No. Not even close. Of course, data can eliminate bad theories, but when evidence is scarce, selection becomes a matter of preference, not proof. So, can anyone honestly claim they've checked the whole set of theories and that the landscape is the inevitable winner? Hint, they didn't pick it by observation or by the iron laws of logic. They picked it by preference. Remember the anthropic principle we discussed before? The one that said that The reason that the finely tuned universe seems unlikely was because it's the only kind of universe that would support observers? Well, the creators and observers of the landscape were exactly the kind of people who would want the landscape to be true. Is it any surprise that they picked that theory as their favorite? Actually, it's worse than that. Infinitely worse. You see, the landscape says that our universe is one of 10 to the power of 500 universes. That's 1 followed by 500 zeros. A 1 followed by 500 zeros is a very big number from a certain point of view. What do I mean by a certain point of view? Well, that number, huge as it may seem, is practically microscopic if we compare it to an infinite set. It's barely even a blip. So choosing one theory from an infinite number of possibilities is far more audacious than choosing one universe from 10 to the 500th power. To solve the problem of a universe that's astonishingly unlikely, they proposed a theory that's infinitely more unlikely. So how do they pass this off as science? Effective storytelling. That's how. They told themselves the story they wanted to hear, and then they packaged it for the public as a compelling story. The math behind the landscape is complicated. Only specialists can deal with it, so communicating results like these is a matter of storytelling. As a novelist, that's my specialty. You see, the history of physics is a pantheon of brilliant minds that took masses of observations and showed us how to connect it all, to reach the one true destination mandated by the observed facts. Maxwell and his equations, Newton and his 3 laws of motion, Einstein and his E equals mc squared. Each emerged not from wishful speculation amid endless options, but as the singular explanation compelled by data and experiment. The authors of the landscape have borrowed that prestige without asking. They use it to pose as our guides to the one true destination. But rather than taking us where we need to go, they took us to the one place that they wanted us to be, for their own reasons. Which leads us back to our casino. When a player keeps winning hand after hand, roll after roll, pull after pull, you know something's up. You know you're being played for a sucker. They're not lucky, they're making their own luck, stacking the deck, loading the dice, rigging the game to force the outcome they want. The Torah saw this coming. Remember Balak and Bilam? When their curses failed, because Israel had no sins to exploit, they didn't give up. They made their own luck. Bilam's advice was simple. If you can't find a sin, create one. Send Moabite women to seduce the Israelites into idolatry at Baal Peor. Manufacture a failure. Force God himself to turn against them. It was spiritual warfare, a last-ditch attempt to survive by bending reality to their desires. But when the truth refused to bend, they fought against it and lost. That's still the choice we face every day. Live up to the truth or deny it. And when denial fails, fight it. Stack our own decks with excuses, illusions, and self-flattery. But there's a better way, to wrestle with the truth. After all, Israel means one who struggles with God. It's a tough and relentless struggle, one that doesn't flatter us. Not about the universe, not about the world, not about ourselves. But for those willing to face it, the truth is the only path that leads anywhere worth going. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more inspiring content, click like and subscribe to my channel. Have you encountered convenient theories that were rigged to cover for wishful thinking? Comment below.